2nd, 2022, Monday. I did a very soft launch of what I'm currently calling Rabbit Hole Linux, but having understood that there's both a Paramount TV program ruining that metaphor for me, and that the whole rabbit hole thing has sort of a negative connotation in the world, as opposed to the only positive connotation I have in my mind. A excessively deep rabbit hole is something you just back out of. You don't get trapped in it. But nonetheless, we can give it an even more positive Alice metaphor and just calling it White Rabbit Linux. And I think I'm going to switch it to that. This is the advantage of a soft launch. No big announcement. Just get the meme in order, right? It's going to be a memetically promoted kind of thing, like Levinix was back in its day. But whereas Levinix was a dead end because it was based on old QEMU binaries that were deathly slow, it achieved its goal of sort of a Noah's Ark of your Python code to float around to any proprietary host machine, Windows, Mac, other Linux machines. But the new stuff is much better. The stuff that's supported at the highly optimized hardware level by all the new CPUs from, ARM to AMD to Intel. They all do the same thing. The term on it is hypervisor, but the actual implementation varies from hardware to hardware, but it's always the same trick of resource management and memory allocation, so that you can have a really good, genuine Linux kernel, so that you can do all those tricks that you do with Docker, but with tech that's just way better than Docker. Docker is not the thing that it's made out to be. It's not the panacea, it's not the cure-all, because it causes proprietary convolutions. As open source as it might seem, it's a private company and they want your money, just like everyone else who does stuff like this. And the Linux community has rallied around the methodology and made it better supported at the hardware level. And then Microsoft and Apple and Linus all followed suit and made it supported at all the various places that you can get. You want to say VM, a Linux VM, but it's more technically a Linux container, a legitimate Linux kernel container running on Macs, Windows. It just doesn't matter. And of course, by definition, on native Linux machines. So that's what White Rabbit, I'm going to have to get that into my tongue. That's what White Rabbit Linux is. It's just the magic incantation script to get one of those set up with a genuinely Linux Python behind your Jupyter install, right? This is all kind of an alternative to Anaconda for the data scientists who want real Python in their Jupyter notebooks, and to people who want to go the DevOps route so that they can sprinkle a little bit of the magic automation fairy dust onto anything they've done with Jupyter notebooks, which you really just can't do when you start out with notebooks that were born on the proprietary platforms because of your backslashes. You're being backslashed, That is some deep channeling there. Also, if you're not being backslashed, you're coming from an uppercase home. When you're from a privileged uppercase home where the first letter of all your home directories are actually uppercase users or whatever, you are similarly proprietary, and all your notebooks will resist easy automation. They will not flow like water from machine to machine, and that's what I'm trying to achieve. The true promise of portability, interoperability, yada yada. It's a recurring promise in so many things. It was the promise of BCPL, which the C language was built on. It's the promise of the Unix operating system, which was built from the C language. It's the promise of Linux, which was, reverse engineered from Unix. It's the promise of Java, which was built for all the proprietary platforms to try and bring that same virtual machine advantage to a broader audience, but flopped because Java didn't take the Unix philosophy. So Linux is the Java virtual machine using the Unix philosophy, and everyone is bending over backwards to make sure that you have this tool in your toolbox, and you don't use Docker to use it. You do some of the similar magic fairy dust as Docker requires, you know, multipass on Macs or WSL, proper activation on Windows. But, you know, in its stead, you put a, you know, as lightweight, low overhead of a Linux container in that location. I prefer Debian derivatives. I use Ubuntu because it's nice to have Mike Shuttleworth on your side. I mean, look at the guy. If he doesn't look like George Washington, I don't know who does, but the iron is very hot, folks. It's a bigger bandwagon than AI, because jumping on the AI bandwagon is not a good time now to do it. It's not stable, except maybe Stability AI, and that's another story. But if you want stability, if you want a stable bandwagon to jump onto, the proper one is using a Linux container in the same sense as you would have used a Java virtual machine, a Java runtime engine in the past, or, you know, compiled your C source code on any hardware platform. Same trick, folks. But it's a much, 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 much better trick, because it lets you run a proper instance of Jupyter, and all your Python becomes cloud friendly, yada yada. Big movement here. You know, this is me cutting those catapult ropes that I'm telling you about, and I think there's a fairly decent chance that I get this embraced as an alternative way to get your Jupyter to Anaconda. That changed their licensing. Based on that basis alone, you should switch. And an alternative to Jupyter Desktop, which, you know, God bless them, but the Project Jupyter is trying to fix this problem. They're scratching the itch in a very different way with, like, Microsoft installers, you know, .msi files, which has its own set of problems that just basically shifts your problems rather than fixing them. So I'll wrap it up there. You get the idea. A lot of good stuff is coming. It's already being soft launched. I'm making little adjustments. It's perfectly usable today. It can change your life today. So hop on bandwagon, a White Rabbit Unix, but you'll be able to always find it through Linux or Pipulate, two made up words that are going to be easy to Google, and find the White Rabbit running across the screen. So just remember Pipulate, Linux, or even just my name, MikeLev.in. It can always be found there, MikeLev.in. Later, Gators.
Yeah, we're almost there.
Yep.